Introduce you. This is my dad, Rick Anderson. So he's got quite a bit of quite a few years of experience managing, leading all sorts of different positions throughout his career in both the Army and civilian life. And so I think it'll be very value added to get his perspective on some of these questions we're going to ask. But before we start, Dad, if you could just take 30 seconds or a minute and give us like the 10 or 20,000 foot view of your career from start to end real quick.
Well, I'm at end right now. I'm enjoying the retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Started, let's say, in from college. Went into active Army. Did the basic, and I did flight school, and then a direct appointment to commissioned officer. Therefore, really getting me into the leadership and management type positions that I really wanted to be in addition to flying helicopters.
And it's fair to say, right, the military at a much younger age than non-military gives you the opportunity to jump into those leadership positions.
Like no other job, career field, whatever, I have ever seen or ever heard of. I personally and others that I have seen have enjoyed getting the experience far beyond my peers that were non-military in similar type positions. I had responsibilities and the opportunity to excel and to learn that I would not have seen just in my civilian life. And by virtue of that, I think that it gave me probably a better starting point when I did go into my career as a civilian. I think it gave me a better starting point. One of my first jobs outside of public accounting into private accounting, I started at a management level position and had not been in civilian life in a management level position prior to that.
Go ahead and dive into the questions. So contingency perspective is a term has been coined in the class for adjusting your style to the person and environment you're in. And so with half or maybe a little more, half of your career being military and the other half being civilian, how have you had to adjust your style to fit those two different environments?
To some degree, there's been some adjustment just because there is a difference in dealing with a military subordinate versus a civilian employee. But in the military, as a commissioned officer, I had the authority to just flat out issue a command and expect it to be done, no questions asked.
Whether or not you wanted to give your reasoning behind it.
That's right.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to shifting into civilian life and dealing with people that are not used to a somewhat authoritarian environment that the military has and has to have, you have to shift, kind of like I mentioned that as I matured as an officer, you learn that you can't just make orders and commands and expect them to be done, nothing else said. You can't do that with a civilian employee and get along with them or last very long in the job, because you will not have the relationship that you need to have.
Yeah, we've learned a little bit that providing some reasoning or the end goal is going to definitely up your subordinates' buy-in when it comes to trying to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was not the term wasn't thinking of that, but that definitely describes what I had in mind.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for the sake of time, we'll move on to the next question, though. So we talked about this briefly earlier, the difference between hard skills and soft skills. Um,
Yes.
so when you're looking to hire someone, what are you looking for? And are there some soft skills that are more important to you? Or can you tell me which is more important, hard skills or soft skills? Just if you could talk
Well,
about that a little bit.
I don't know that you can say one is more important than the other. You have to um, basically, to even begin the conversation in hiring an employee, you have to ascertain whether or not they have the minimum hard skills to do the job.
Right.
Because if they have not attained and basically can show me on a resume or a diploma or whatever, if you can't show me that you have the hard skills to do the job that I have open and available, then there's not really much point in talking to you, and you don't even get to the issue of the soft skills.
So if you're going to
Um,
hire an accountant, they at least need to have studied accounting. That's what you're saying. That's the
and
first barrier.
if you couldn't demonstrate that you had that, then there really wasn't any point in talking to you. And they were weeded out actually before they ever got to me by human resources. Human
So then
resources,
after that, that's when soft skills came into play. Then after they met the bearer requirement. Um,
you ascertain that. One, and then as part of that discussion, you start to see the soft skills that you need the person to have. When you first meet the person, what are the impressions that you have? What is their, how are they reacting to you? How are they reacting to the natural tension of someone meeting someone for the first time and knowing they're being analyzed and their skills are being analyzed in the possibility of getting a job?
but like looking
Um,
in you in the eye or looking at their
Yes,
feet.
and talking to you as a,
Mhm.
are they just answering questions or are they engaging? Are they showing that they understand and how and explaining how they have done these things and what they can bring to the job?
It sounds
And
almost like you're saying that hard skills are going to get them the interview, and then the soft skills going to get them the job.
that's
Essentially.
that is a great way of looking at it because I very much agree with that.
Okay.
In essence, is what I guess I've been trying to say
Yeah.
is that um, if you don't have the hard skills, you won't even get through the door.
Right. But then the soft skills, that's what's going to set you apart.
The soft skills in addressing the hard skills is the make it or break it when it comes to hiring.
Okay. We'll move on. I'm gonna ask we'll pick some of my favorites for the sake of time. Then, um, this is one we hadn't talked about earlier, but how do you motivate an underperforming employee? And I'm sure your motivation styles are going to be different from the army
Um,
to the civilian world, right? But where do you start?
well, one of the things that it wasn't necessarily a skill I learned in the military. In the military, it was a little bit more blunt. But as a manager, and engaging with the people that I knew in the HR function, um, there is a recommended procedure when it comes to having issues with a subordinate
Mhm.
and how you address issues being underperformance or
Sure.
incorrect or what anyway a negative situation.
Right.
Okay, the recommendation is you have a sit down, face to face, verbal, where you describe what is happening. You make clear what should be happening whether they're falling short on deadlines or accuracy or whatever, or even interpersonal skills. Whatever the basically the failure is, you address, explain, and make clear what your expectations are in that conversation. And at the end of that conversation, you can either set a standard of what you expect to happen within a certain period of time. Okay, within the next 2 weeks, I expect to see this change that I have told you I want to see to the level that I expect. And if the change has happened and is obviously continuing, we're
You're good. Okay. Well, so that's
If-
okay. So that's the most important thing. I was curious, just where you start. And so it sounds like you start by first.
Yeah.
You at least owe them that maybe they don't know that they're not meeting an
Oh,
expectation.
yeah. No,
So you
that-
owe them the conversation first.
that's why it is verbal.
Hmm.
That's why you don't really put the fear of God in them with
Sure.
putting it in writing.
Right.
You do make a written record for your own private file,
But it doesn't follow them around.
but it does not follow them around.
I
And
think it's worth noting that you part of the verbal was to set a goal for them of
Oh.
improvement.
oh,
And
without a doubt, if you don't do that, why did you have the meeting?
right, but that's goals we've been learning are like one of the main ways you can motivate someone.
Well, you have to have goals, and then you have to have certain expectations in those goals being attained.
Right. Okay.
So,
Oh yeah, that's good. I think that's a good. That satisfies an answer to that question. You talked about this a little bit. You said as you matured as an officer, you saw your leadership changing some, but with a little more self-reflection. Can you talk about where you started leadership style and where you're at right now?
when I don't know if I can say when I started, you're talking about being a junior officer, and you're talking about working with senior NCOs that are older than you. You're talking about working with and or around junior NCOs that are your age or younger.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a tendency, and it is so easy to get too close, too personal level. You're not keeping it professional. And when you see that comes back and bites you, because when you want something done or you instruct someone to do something and you get flack or you don't get the job done,
Because they're your buddy and they think they can get away with it.
they think they can get away with it.
Mhm.
You're going to pay the price, because you shouldn't have gotten to where they think that they can do that. So you need to be approachable. You need to have a reasonable relationship with all of them, but it always has to have a professional side, a professional distance, where you don't have that, you haven't given them the opportunity to cross that line.
Right.
You
We've
don't
talked about
enable.
that. Yeah. Having a little bit when I first started, I wanted to be everybody's friend, and then
Doesn't work.
no, that's not the best approach. I think I've evolved sort of in the same way. All right. Well, I'd say that wraps up everything we had talked about. Myself and my class appreciate your time. I think they're very lucky to hear from you, and so thank you.